Morning.
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 Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, welcome to another episode of Everyday Men Profound Conversations. I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Jonathan Richardson. I'm here today with my fellow co-hosts, MKP brothers and comrades. We have Brenton Ruger, we have Adam McConnell, and Ken Emmer behind the scenes doing our IT work. Very grateful to be here. We represent Mankind Project of the Greater Carolinas. This is a monthly interview covering a wide range of topics centered around radical changes, racial and social injustice, health matters, sexuality, and gender studies. Okay, every interview features guests who specialize in these topics. We offer this platform to expand our boundaries, push the envelope for change by bringing awareness to those who may be curious but not quite sure where to start searching. Our shows are sponsored by the Mankind Project of the Greater Carolinas, a chapter of Mankind Project USA. This is a global organization whose primary focus is on wellness for men. As initiated men, we are responsible for our own well-being and offer support in any way we are capable of for our fellow brothers who are in need. Thank you all for joining us today. We are live, and this is our eighth of 12 episodes, and I just want to touch bases briefly on just how much the Mankind Project means to me. This is back in 2012 is when I first became affiliated with this organization. And of course, I had some pretty heavy emotional things going on in my life. Still do, but just attending I groups, there was a good amount of carpet work that and ways of processing that I've never experienced before. So it resonated with me, and it literally, just from being affiliated with such powerful men who seemed to me to be on top of their emotional battles, it moved me to join this organization. Back in 2013, I dealt with the misfortunes of losing a child, and within a couple of months, I was initiated. I was attending one of the warrior training weekends, and it, for lack of a better word, it saved my life. It saved my life, and it probably saved the lives of my children who were in bereavement. I don't know where I would have been, honestly, as a man if I didn't have some of this support to lean on. So with that, I just want to also say that today is a special day for me. This show is going to be dedicated to my daughter. This is her birthday. She would be 17 years old. And so I dedicate the show to my daughter, Lowcountry Richardson. And today we're also going to be discussing, the topic of this show is exploring the benefits of youth mentorship. Okay. Just you would be surprised at just how powerful an impact such a humble title, mentor, can have on someone else's big picture. And we have our friends today. We have Meredith Crowe. She's a mother, CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Lowcountry. And we have our brother, Shawn Saulsberry. Father, local North Charleston resident, I believe, and senior management of strategic transformations. And he's also on the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Lowcountry. Welcome. It's an honor to have you here, for both of you here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's just get right into it, yeah? Either one of you can start. You can take your time, take a few minutes and explain a few things about yourself, who you are, what drives you to be a mentor, and any other thing you feel moved to share. Either one can lead off.
So I have the privilege of leading a youth mentorship organization. I do believe that everybody, regardless of their lived experience, needs a mentor, regardless of how healthy, how privileged, how rarefied life might be. Everybody needs a mentor. I still have them. Deciding, and sometimes it's your parents. You're lucky to have parents that can be that for you. And sometimes it's the parents you find, or the aunt you find, or the friends you find. And it's really about seeking counsel and seeking out mirrors that can help you grow. Here in the Lowcountry, we know that there's roughly 10,000 kids that are without mentors who really need mentors. And we have the privilege of working with about 200 right now a year at Big Brothers Big Sisters. We consider ourselves teammates for these kids. Their parents are the first coach, the first mentor, their guardian. They reach out to us and they ask us to join their child's team. And we find them compatible mentors who are willing to show up for them and consistently hold space for them, decenter themselves, and really be hell-bent, to use some profane words early, kick it off early, hell-bent on seeing the strengths and assets in these young people, despite the noise that may be around them, so that they can discover their greatness and their goodness. And so it's a deep pleasure and privilege of mine to be in this work.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thanks for sharing that, Meredith. My background, I'm literally a child of Charleston Heights, attended Shakur Elementary, moved out to the country, attended St. Stephen High, St. Stephen Middle. And growing up was a very difficult experience for me. I was abandoned by my mom when I was 2. Was raised by my grandparents, both who had about an 8th grade education. At the same time, they taught me everything I needed to live, and I'm still living on those principles today. Mm-hmm. Went through a rough childhood with a lot of physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. And I find myself here today just feeling so grateful, being able to have the right mentors in my life. I call myself a man of many mothers. I have about 5 women who pulled me in and who have invested in my life and really filled the gap that I had. The longest time I would ask myself, what's it like to be loved by a mother? And they showed me that, and they still show me that. And at the very same time, not having a father figure present in my life, maybe in and out once or twice a year. My uncle adopted me, if you will. He calls me the worm because I'm shorter, and my brother, he calls the snake because he's taller. Well, my Uncle Seymour, he brought me in, and to this day, he's 80 years old, and he's still sharing principles of life with me and mentoring me along the way. So, coming from where I've come from to get my education up and through my doctorate, and being able to represent Ernst Young the way that I do in this community, and most importantly, being part of Big Brothers Big Sisters, I'm just happy to be here. And I am just so grateful that you guys would have me. And I want to share anything that I can to help anyone overcome any obstacles from a mentoring perspective.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, both of you. It's definitely a pleasure to have this topic raised, and it's an honor to bring it to the table. One thing that Shawn, you and I both share, personally, is the mission to shatter the negative stereotypes of Black men. I there isn't. I don't think there's a lack of Black leadership in men. What we deal with is a lack of exposure to those of us who are doing the work, the necessary work that needs to be done. Would you like to share any of any of your lived experiences of a black man, and how important it is to be a mentor.
Thank you for the question, Jonathan. What I can tell you is this. The stereotype for Black men, it's a pervasive, ongoing message that's subliminal, and it's hard to overcome. I found myself at times saying, but not saying, "Hey, I'm a nice African American male. I'm not an angry Black man. I'm not, any of those stereotypes." It's like I've wanted to prove through my actions somehow that I don't fit the stereotype and that I am present and that I'm here for my children. I'm doing what I need to do. But what I can tell you, the thing that gets me a little discouraged from time to time is the messaging that comes with African American men and being mentors. For some reason, just because we wear the skin that we do, we're automatically disqualified, or we're treated as not being capable of being present consistently, not having the tools, if you will, much less to manage ourselves, in addition to helping mentor someone else. So, as an African American male, as a Black man, I think I spend a lot of my time trying to dispel the stereotype. And it's sad that it exists, but it's just part of my reality.
I mean, even in arenas outside of mentorship, just the everyday lived experience, buying groceries,
Yep.
in the break room with coworkers, you name it, just the the energy that engulfs just about any room that I feel I walk into. There's this sense, there's this, pardon my French, oh shit, a Black guy just came in.
Mm.
So, how do I navigate? How do I navigate that? I learned not to minimize myself anymore, but I don't take on their energy. I don't, absorb that, because that's a negative reinforcement on their part. I
Exactly.
choose not to accept anymore.
Mhm.
You know? And it's tough. It is tough. It's extremely tough to be in the skin, but it's also rewarding, and
Mhm.
in ways, you know. Um, yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that. Did Adam or Brenton, do you have any?
Yeah, thank you both for sharing that and for touching on that. I think it's an incredibly important conversation, and looking at everybody's lived experiences. I have something that just came up for me. I have so many questions, but the first one is something that Meredith said. Everyone, regardless of their lived experience, needs a mentor, and that really hit me.
Mhm.
Because I think about parents doing the very best that they can, with what they have to work with what they were taught. There's no doubt about it. This isn't about judging parents or anything like that, in my estimation, but it's about what is it that a mentor brings to a child that a parent just can't, whether it's perspective, whether it's celebrating. Can you touch on that just a little bit, because that was such a profound comment that hit me. I'd love to kind of springboard off of that. Like, what do you think it is that a mentor brings that everybody, regardless of their lived experience, though important, could benefit and be served by a mentor?
Yeah. I wish I knew the name of the study, but about 15 years ago, I read something that was talking about how all children need three non-parental role models in their lifetime. But there's some resiliency, and I want to come back to the word resiliency because it's getting a bad name, and I think there are reasons for that, but I think it's important for us to touch on that, so we can come back to that if you could help me.
Yes.
I think it has a lot to do with attachment, and by that I mean parents are attached to outcomes for their young people. Parents are attached to ideas about who their child is. We tell ourselves stories. We have hopes and dreams. We have fears more than anything. And we can take the life out of the room with our kids. Like it takes a lot of discipline to hold space and decenter ourselves as parents. I failed at that at least 5 times this week. And I think that when kids encounter adults who are less attached, that there's some freedom in that. I think that's part of it. I think also, kids can also hear lessons differently. I just heard about this story with this big brother and little brother. We were on the phone. Every month we have conversations with all 3 parties, the parent, the child, the mentor, to sort of assess where things are. And one of my great staff asked a question. So most recently, what's been your favorite moment with your big brother? And this 12-year-old said, it was when he was talking to me about how important it is to respect my mom, which is like not what you expect a 12-year-old to say. You expect that like they went fishing or, something along those lines. But the intimacy of that conversation and the openness that he had in that moment to be receptive to that conversation with someone who isn't telling him how to be or what to do, but instead is creating some space to have a conversation without all the baggage and the noise around it, allows it to get through. And I really think it has to do with fear and attachment. So the less embedded, so to speak, mentors are in your life, the less over responsible they feel for your outcome, the greater freedom and lightness there is and possibility. That's the best I have for that.
I think that's wonderful. That really hits the nail on the head for me. And it's almost like with that freedom comes a level of safety, or just being able to open up to the suggestions and advice and the mentorship relationship, it would seem.
Yeah. And parents are telling you what to do, and we all need to remember to ask more questions, but mentors are sort of primed, or ideally are primed to ask more questions. And so again, creating space. Yeah.
Okay. And you wanted to circle back on resiliency?
Yeah. So, I was thinking about what Jonathan and Shawn were sharing in terms of their experience in their skin. And I was thinking about the fact that almost 90% of the youth that we serve would identify as Black and brown. And so we have this extraordinary responsibility, but it is unfair that we have to work with these youth to prepare them and grow them in resilience. Wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have to be all that resilient? And wouldn't it be nice if, as Black boys in particular, they didn't have to be as resilient? So we'll work with them and we'll mentor them and we'll help them see their greatness and goodness and all their strengths and help them envision where they want to be, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that they will come to age into an unfair world in which they're going to have to be more resilient than they should have to be. And I just want to say that out loud, because the things and the weight that Jonathan and Shawn have to carry, and the resilience and fortification that they have to, that armor they put on every morning when they go into mixed spaces, like that is extra. And unfair. And it's part of our work, but it's not okay. So I just wanted to say that.
And let me piggyback off of that real quick. I'm of the mindset of Jonathan, though, because it is a huge opportunity as well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because when you can go in and, I'm having conversations as a consultant and I'm talking about whatever, just to see the looks on certain people's faces, it's incredible. And it's furthering the case that, there is a difference and we don't meet the stereotype and things are changing. So, I mean, that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. We've talked about that before, Shawn, that it's nice to catch people on their heels.
That's right.
Be a little delightful in a certain way.
Yeah. In essence, changing those stereotypes.
Not only changing, but just shattering them. I mean, just shattering them.
Yeah, that's the opportunity.
So many ways. Meredith, I had a question for you. Where did it go? Would you mind defining the term justice for all co-conspirator?
So if I were to sort of give myself some labels, I mean, I'm a white-ish woman, white woman, with some Latino birth history, but not lived experience. And so I think about the responsibility I have leading an organization that's Black serving, predominantly Black serving. And so that's specific. When you're in service of an organization that is Black serving, the decision making that I have to go through every day and the kitchen cabinet I have to have around me to check me when I'm not on that path of true justice and really conspiring to positive purpose for these young people and keeping it youth centric. That's sort of what I mean. I'm not going to be happy or feel like my job on this globe is concluded until I feel like everybody has an equal shot, that the playing field is level. And so whether that's, that's going to pour into all kinds of applications, not just mentoring, but, housing and job opportunities and education and, however we can pair our mission up to be supportive of others in that regard, I think is important. We have one mission, we do one thing. But I do feel the world is terribly unequal. And so I feel personal responsibility to stay thoughtful about that and make sure that our organization is focused on equity in every practice. So that's what I mean by that. Like it's not passive. It is an active posture.
I had a quick question, and I want to get back to like the topic of like mentorship specifically in a moment, but and I hope this doesn't come across as wrong, and this might be an awkward question, but I'm going to say it. There's been times where I've tried to engage in helping communities that may be beset by violence or with some programs that were intended to help with conflict resolution, particularly amongst Black and brown boys. And I've got a lot of pushback from the African-American community. These are civic leaders and religious leaders who said, this is our space, and you as a white man, don't come here. Essentially, that's the messaging that I got. I didn't take it personally, really. I felt helpless. Like, how can I help as a white man trying to serve a Black community that may see me as untrustworthy or maybe as something that maybe, as an other, essentially. That's a loaded question, and I don't hope it's not taken wrong, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Who wants that? Do you want me to go first as a white person? Then Shawn and Jonathan, or you guys want to dive in first because you're experts?
I would just add to that, and this may sound awkward, but it's actually a bit of encouragement. Just there's going to be pushback regardless. Growing up, there was this lyric in a hip hop group, Naughty by Nature. Quickly, it said, so don't say jack, and please don't say you understand, all that man-to-man talk can walk. That's pushback towards anyone, whether that was my form of disconnecting. And it wasn't just towards people who didn't look like me. That was my way of disconnecting to everyone, even those who look like me. If whether they walked through the gauntlet as I did or not. Again, I'm glad you didn't take it personal, and it shouldn't be taken personal. It's coming out of fear. It's coming out of mistrust. I mean, mistrust is huge, and it's just a part of the growth, the growing pains of receiving pushback. But it also It causes one to check in on their perseverance and resilience, which is what we've spoken on already. So there's going to be that, just know that, but don't give up. Somebody's gonna let you in. Somebody will let you in.
And Jonathan, thank you for that response. It's it's very clear that just taking on that stance at times because of what we've experienced has been tough, right? And so when someone from the outside comes in, it gets difficult because of sometimes folks come in as the savior, saying they have the solution, or they may come in looking down upon the people they're serving. This is a big part of why I love what I get to do with Big Brothers Big Sisters and with Meredith, and she can elaborate on this. It requires a whole change of language. Like, how do you see the people you're serving? Do you see them as part of the problem, or can you look at the innate gifts they have within them that have been suppressed because of everything they're facing as part of the solution, as you find ways to call that out? Like, do you see yourself as the expert on their community, or can you look at them as the expert on their lived experience and come in a humbled way to learn more and bring resources and assistance to come alongside, not to supplant or displace, and bring in your solution for their problem? So sometimes that's where a lot of the mistrust comes from. Like, how do you see us? How do you speak about us when you're not serving us? Like, do you say, oh yeah, I'm working with those kids in that neighborhood, helping them with their problems? Or how do you change that language? And I just want to toss it over to Meredith to talk about how you lead Big Brothers Big Sisters and the language that all of us are required to use in looking at the people and the children that we get to mentor.
Yeah, thank you for saying the children we get to mentor.
Yes.
It is such a privilege to have these people in your life. One, social service sector has been besotted with terrible language for years, and Big Brothers Big Sisters is no exception. Like when I came on into this role about just over 2 years ago, was looking through our language and I was like, whoa, man, we got to stop that now. Fortunately, we were super small, so we didn't have the bureaucracy to take forever to make changes. But a good example of this is, we use the language like assessment and whether they're qualified for our program. And I'm like, what are we talking about? Like that goes away. Like, are we going to be great teammates for these families or what? Are we right for their team? They initiated with us. They don't have it all figured out. We don't have it all figured out. Their lives are noisy. Our lives are noisy. Like, they invited us into their family. They don't know us. We don't deserve their trust. But we have 500 youth on our waiting list, hungry. And so I think of these families as hungry and hopeful. And we say we're hungry and hopeful. And that's how we think about it. We don't do assessments anymore. We interview families to figure out whether we're going to be good teammates for them. So the linguistic change is the first step often, just to say, how are we embodying the attitude we want to have? We don't have it right all the time. We're still getting caught up in it. And we'll put ourselves through a full equity audit this next year, just from top to bottom, all of the program practices. But the point in this is our mental orientation, which is what Shawn was referencing, is very important. And it's super important in the mentoring experience. So, we're going to be the redundant school of redundancy with our mentors. Like, are you coming in and your job is to find all their good things, all their greatness, focus on that, help them see it, decenter yourself, ask questions, don't make this about you. That is the training that they get, and they're just adults like we are, so they're going to make mistakes. And so that's also in if you go to our website, our Lowcountry, Big Brothers Big Sisters Lowcountry /be a big, you're going to see this front door dressing. It's like the wreath we put on the front door, and it says, are you these things? Are you willing to be these things? And most of it has to do with being humble, culturally humble, because we do cross-cultural matching. So you still, even if you don't have the lived experience, you have to have the right attitude, because, you know, you can't see these kids as those kids. They're our kids.
Right.
They're a mom's kid. They're their grandma's kid who invited us into their lives and trust us without us deserving it yet. Think about the vulnerability that takes. Think about the communities that have to ask for help. That's hard. So we have to have our heads on straight for that endeavor. So I hope that answers your question. So going back to your original question, I think it's always about asking questions. Like, do they want you? Why should they think that you know what there is to do about conflict? Like, what are their ideas about resolving conflict? What kind of, you know, who would they have involved? What would make them feel like you're trustworthy? I mean, it takes time. And as a white woman leading this organization, I can tell you it's taking time for me to even establish myself with credibility. And I've got work to do still. It's going to take years. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a powerful conversation. And I experienced it. And this leads into the next question that I'm fascinated about. When I joined the Peace Corps and went and served in the West Indies, and was a minority in my privilege, the way I showed up, I was dealt a real healthy dose of humble pie. And they weren't like, oh, thanks for coming in here and helping us. It was actually the opposite. And it's something, and I went kind of in a dark night of the soul, like, why am I here? Yada, yada, yada. And I realized something needed to die inside me. I needed to see things differently. And one of my mentors says this time and time again: we're either working to prove something or we're working to serve. And we cannot do both at the same time. And when I'm showing up for the benefit of these young people or for a cause that I'm passionate about, I need to be very careful. Am I showing up to prove that I'm a good person, that I'm doing things right? Or am I truly and deeply here to serve? Because if I'm here to serve, I can weather the storm of resistance, of judgment, of mistrust, things like that. And I don't make it mean anything about me. And that's always been something that's stuck in my mind. Proving or serving, you got to choose one. And I'd rather be on the side of serving than proving something. And so in that realm, I've looked back at my life and I'm like, God, I've made some good decisions, and I've made some really piss poor decisions as well. And there's something, Shawn, I'd love to ask you, you know, and not that I'm assuming you've made mistakes in your life, but, you know, mistakes being part of life, and I think an important part of life. How do the mistakes that you've perhaps made in your life benefit, you know, a mentoring relationship with a child?
And thank you for sharing that backdrop of your experience out of the country and how that recalibrated your viewpoint. And it's a really darn good question, because I think, and I was going to say this earlier, the best thing that I can do when I'm mentoring someone is be transparent about where I failed. Because people see what they think they see on your resume, and they're looking at, you know, this upward mobility of climbing and all that stuff. What I am able to share with children and really come to grips with them is talk to them about how I didn't apply myself the right way early on in school, and how I paid the price for that. I mean, there are things that I couldn't do because I didn't apply myself correctly. Also, even as becoming a young adult, the importance of financial literacy. I didn't have that. And so I've made some mistakes, and, you know, even as an adult, just trying to manage finances, running a business, all of these things. And then I also talk about the mistakes I've made relationally because of my background and some of the anger I held on to for being abandoned or being physically abused by my father, all these things that I held on to for way too long, and really being transparent with kids at the level that they can understand how it's taken years of counseling and years of my mentors calling me on my crap and saying, get over this stuff. You know, it's a new day. You've overcome so much. Why are you still angry? So, I think the best way that I can help is to really humanize myself. Not only talk about the mistakes of the past, but darn, the mistakes I make every day. Just little, stupid things that I do, time wasters, things that I could, be better about, just to let them know that, hey, I am just like you. I'm no better than you. You are no worse than I am. I'm just trying to maybe help save you from some of the mistakes that I made, if at all possible, or at least educate you about some of the mistakes I made so that maybe you can do something different.
Beautiful, beautiful. So in a lot of ways, your experience with those really do help to serve. And I think that's, for me, something that I've needed to overcome, that transparency in really being authentic in who I am actually serves young people in their growth rather than hinders it.
I think so.
And that's what I hear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You touched base on one of my thoughts, Shawn, because I'm really good at mentoring my sons because I've changed their diapers, I've watched them grow, and all of that. So it's easy to switch from father to friend, back to father, slip in a little, moments of friendship and things like that. But one of the things that, and I'll be transparent about it, I've talked to Meredith about this a while ago, and one of my fears and doubts that I hold is how to connect, how to move forward with a young person once a connection is established, because I can go in all day long about what I've been through and how I can relate, but then what? Are there any type of is there any curriculum? Is there any type of programming, or do mentors have mentors on how to mentor? Is that
yeah? As we sort of scale our program, we will have more of the sort of cohorts, so to speak, and learning opportunities that way. But our program is structured in such a way that you're having those monthly conversations with our staff about what conversations are you having with your little brother? How's that going? What are you guys doing? What questions are you asking him? To get your brain thinking. There's this organic thing that happens, right? Like when you're out having an ice cream cone or taking a walk. These kids are not looking for deep conversations. They're looking for someone who's going to show up for them and do it consistently and care enough about them to like ring the doorbell and spend 2 hours with them twice a month. Their expectations aren't as high as yours. That is for darn sure. They don't care. They're happy to run some errands with you. So this heaviness that mentors carry around, again, it's just noise. It's just noise. Sometimes it's just learning how to tie shoelace. Yeah. Sometimes it's like please don't do this, but having a burping contest. It's like, it's not all this heaviness. It's just not. The insight and the depth pokes in, and that evolves. But this, it's much lighter than we think it is. I always say that your first 90 days with your little brother is something like this. Like you ring the doorbell and mom has to spend, 5 minutes getting her son out of the house to hang out with this stranger. And then it's like you ring the doorbell and it takes less time. And then you ring the doorbell and he's at the door, and and the next day he's on the stoop. It takes time for them to come out and trust you. But like, don't try to dive into the deep end. That'll happen organically. And I'm going to stereotype right now or generalize. Female relationships in the mentoring space come together much faster because they're more communicative and you're just wired that way. Men and boys have to do things together before this happens. It takes longer. You've seen guys at bars, they sit like this, whereas women are like this. And guys, they're like slowly like this, but it takes time for men and boys to get where they need to be. So like, don't worry about any of that. Less worrying, more just doing what you say you'll do and being accountable, like the Mankind Project wants everybody to be.
And so that really kind of lends into the question that's at the top of my mind is kind of what makes a mentor successful. What is it, the qualities? And I think you've spoke to some of that. Just, it sounds like to me, just showing up with a desire to serve first and foremost, just,
Yeah.
and then self out of the way a little bit and just having some fun.
And selfishly like desire to have some fun. Like make it like the lightness is what these kids sometimes need. Like be silly, be an idiot. Like that's mostly what these kids need.
Easy for me.
That's an easy ask.
So burping contest it is.
My son's favorite moment with me, he's such an extrovert and I'm such an introvert. And so the energy is mismatched. I love him dearly, but his favorite moment is the 2-song dance party that he gets to call as an audible at any point in time, right? That kind of lightness is what these youth need. Not that you need to have 2-song dance parties, but that kind of mindset.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. One thing that I try to do is I try to remember how I felt when that mentor made themselves available to me. Being deprived of having that in my life and looking forward to it, it came with a lot of things. So number one, they needed to show up, because if they disappointed me, that would take me from the stoop back into the house, if you will, as Meredith said. And then number two, I didn't have a lot of expectations. I simply just wanted to be with you. I simply just wanted to have fun, just to have the outlet and to know that I could do this and have fun. I mean, it was the biggest thing to me. So I try to remind myself of that and just not make it so hard. You'll be surprised at what your mentee and what our scholars will pick up from you, the things that they admire about you, not because you're trying to prove something, but just because you're being who you are, So I try to take the air out of it. And I'll also tell you this, Meredith pointed this out too, but that transparency and that fun and whatever, I do with my boys, and they call me on my crap all the time. And it's the funnest part of our relationship. Like my 14-year-old, although he has sickle cell disease, he wants to play a 3-game series of basketball with me. And he loves it like, Dad, let's go outside so I can beat you at basketball. And that's all we do. And does he win all the time? I'm not going to say, but
he's watching. Yeah.
But it's all about having fun. So I think that's one of the best things you can do. Just let the air out, have a burping contest, although not so advised by Big Brothers, Big Sisters, but have a burping contest and have fun.
And can you speak to just a little bit? And I know they all probably look different. What is the structure of a mentor-mentee relationship? And I heard you say twice a month, a couple hours.
Yeah. So different mentoring programs have different structure, but Big Brothers Big Sisters is specific. It's evidence-based, and what we ask is that our mentors commit to in the community-based program, which is our hallmark program, that they commit to no less than 12 months and seeing their little brother 2 times a month. Now, some do it at once a week because they get into it and they love it, but we require 2 times a month. We do know that when mentors get to that 12-month line, they'll stick it out on average another 2 years. So we usually get a 3-year run. And then a lot of these relationships will persist outside of our program once they sort of sunset for whatever reason. To your point about mistakes earlier, we run 5-part background checks on all of our bigs, but we look at every single one of those background checks one at a time to make decisions. So mistakes are not disqualifiers for that. We interview our bigs to understand everything about them, their lived experience, their temperament, personality, sexuality, religion, hobbies, skills, all of it. And we do the same with families, because families get to be specific. They can say, I want a college educated African-American Christian man. The young person's like, he's got to like fishing or basketball or something like that. And we have to match up compatible, and we get it right 9 out of 10 times. So we're matchmakers, expert matchmakers for mentoring. We do better than Match.com in this regard. And then we introduce you to one another and put the mentor through a little bit of training, and then that ongoing coaching and support. So that's sort of what it takes. Most of our mentors will meet with their little brothers or little sisters in the evenings and weekends. And again, making that next appointment at the end of the one you're on and showing up consistently that's it. Please don't come out of pocket. It's supposed to be free and reduced cost activities. This is not Disneyland, nor do we want to put mom in a specific position where she's not staying as provider. She needs to be honored in that regard. And then we do have another program called the Big Beyond, which Shawn alluded to earlier when he referred to the mentees as scholars. These are high schoolers. It's a 3-year e-mentoring program where our mentors are dialing in during the day, keep it sacred, the lunch hour from 12 or 11:30 to 12:45 every other Wednesday over the course of 3 years to prepare these young people for life beyond graduation. So there's sort of 2 ways to engage with us. And that's us.
So it's easy to move with a couple of mentees from that adolescent age into teenagers into that mentoring beyond.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And Meredith, that program is typically virtual, correct?
Yeah, the high school Big Beyond program is virtual. The community-based program is in person, and it's just 2 different trunks. So you were talking about curriculum earlier, Jonathan. The community or the Big Beyond is curriculum guided. So there's financial literacy sort of baked in, career and college exploration or military exploration is baked in, social and emotional growth mindset, all those failures that we need to talk about. Like, we'll give our mentors like this discussion guide in advance, like, think of all the ways you messed up. Get prepared to be vulnerable and transparent. Because when we get into that conversation, that high schooler is going to have the biggest skepticism, because that's how we're wired when you're in high school. And so, you better be prepared to talk about your strengths and your weaknesses and get your head on straight. But we're really excited about that program. It launches this year.
Awesome.
That's called the Big Beyond. That's
the Big Beyond. It's the virtual mentoring every other Wednesday. So if people are interested in that, we'd love to have a conversation with you ASAP. The community-based relationships that will serve, 170 of those this year. Those, it's a rolling recruitment. So anybody who wants to get engaged with that at any time, it's great.
So we'll request, if you guys have any information on those programs, we'll send them over to our beloved IT guy behind the scenes here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they can go check it out. Be really wonderful.
I think Adam wants to.
I have a question, a burning
Yeah.
thing, and sometimes I get a little wordy, but when I first joined the Mankind Project, because I was raising 2 boys, and I didn't have very positive, strong male role models growing up in my life.
Yeah, get it.
And I was scared, and I was dealing with my own emotional immaturities and imbalances and dysfunction. And I'm very fortunate to have found the Mankind Project, and these men have become mentors to me as I try to become a mentor to my kids and my community and so forth. Meredith, in our check-in, you said something that really touched me, and it was that you want to instill a feeling that these children belong. Right. And what I found through my work at Mankind Project was that these deep beliefs I have about myself, like that for me personally, are I don't belong, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. Those types of stories and shadow beliefs that I have about myself. And I look back and they've driven like incredible amounts of really important decisions in my life that I was not really aware of until I got engaged with this work and happened to take that sort of self-reflection a little bit more seriously. It took me 40 something years to get here. when you're working with children and your if we're big and they're littles, what can you see that transformation happening like rapidly, or is this something that sort of emerges over time and may not even become apparent until they're much further along in their adult life or so forth? If that makes sense. Like, do they get that sense of belonging? We're trying to show these kids that they are worthy and they are enough, and you do belong, and we're here for you as your mentor. But what constitutes a successful sort of mentorship that way, where you actually see that transformation in that child during the process?
So the answer to your question is yes, which is to say there are some early markers, and then there's this residual feeling that we have long term. I had a tough childhood, and I'm missing I have that mother hunger, right? Like that's different for women. But I think about like collecting moms, which Shawn has a collection of moms too. And I think about my, like, who are my avatars? And there have been people who have been great mothers to me over the time. And I just remember those moments when I need to sort of ground myself in a feeling of belonging. So I think about, this collection of mentors we can accumulate over our lives. So within a formal mentoring relationship or not, like there's that sort of echoing and groundingness there. But I think the other thing that we do is we have a youth outcome survey where we're asking several questions at the beginning of the relationship and at 1 year and beyond, each year on the anniversary. And we ask questions that evoke responses like, my big brother, big sister is a very important adult in my life. To what degree do you agree with this statement? And consistently 98%, 96, 92, in the 90s, they're saying, yes, that's true. I feel good about myself when I'm with my mentor, like off the charts. The self-concept, I can make friends easily with other kids. Like these kinds of markers are indicative of this feeling of belonging. I get along with my parents. I was so amazed to see that 89% of our littles this last year reported that they get along with their parents.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. Just having a mentor in your life makes you get along better with your parents because you're spreading that energy. That's the most bizarre and magical part of, like, in terms of our data. I'm always flabbergasted by how just having a mentor and how quickly that relationship with the parent improves by virtue of that new person. Beyond that, I mean, I've listened to kids say things like, I know my big brother loves me, like boys that say this. You can see it in the way they interact with one another, like just the body language. I had one little sister say, and I was on a video, that they self-produced. Big sister said, so what's one thing that I've taught you? And she says that black is beautiful. That being black is beautiful. So, these things happen quicker than you might imagine, but the residual effect of that long-term is huge. I mean, the things I haven't shared is that, I've made so many mistakes personally because I did not have good parental role models. I mean, I'm just getting to like radical vulnerability in my interpersonal relationships, and that fight or flight comes fast. And I'm like, no. And that's sort of self-checking. Kids who are more securely attached and have securely attached relationships are not going to struggle the way that we have experienced. They will be more able to connect authentically with other adults and with their own kids. So I hope that answers your question, which is that it's fast and slow and natural, and we know that it happens.
And quick follow-up, just specifically with like boys, I guess, because we are a men's group, focus group. Yeah. Just, is there a difference between the mentorship that men provide within your organization than women do? I know you talked about the differences of how they approach it, but in terms of outcomes, is there a difference?
That's interesting. I haven't disaggregated the outcomes and I almost want to do that. You've provoked a thought in me. So that's going to happen. I might have a personal bias that says most of the caregivers in the young people's lives are female, whether they're big sister, little sisters or little brothers. And so I think that the women in the program who have big sisters, or the little girls in the program that have big sisters, are probably gaining differently than the boys that are missing male role models. And it takes us 6 times as much effort to recruit men. We have 70% of the 500 kids on our waiting list are boys. And I would say probably 20% of the waiting list we have for mentors is men. So I spent all of our cash on men and mentors of color because there are 279 white women on our waiting list eager to be big sisters. And so men. So I would say that the need is greater, but not just in numbers. I think it's experientially, it's greater. And that's nothing to say about our little sisters who gains tremendously with their big sisters. But if we really want to heal the world, we would have men showing up for boys.
I remember some of the most profound experiences when I was young, outside of my father, was when I, being in the ages of between maybe 12 and 15 years old, when I had a man just sit and listen to me and hear me out and show interest in like my thoughts, my feelings, just show interest, change something in me. It just, that in and of itself, I remember vividly a couple guys, I used to surf, and one of these men that came over from Hawaii was just so kind. He'd sit down with us young guys and just talk. And I just remember how that changed so much in me. So I remind myself that oftentimes it doesn't have to be so difficult that I make it kind of difficult. It's just listening, and how profoundly important the act of listening can be for a child, just to be heard, to be validated, and how that can kind of remind them that they're not defined by their current circumstances.
Yeah. Shawn's uncle.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I know we're getting close to our time here, so I just wanted to share that. Really thank you both for being on here and really lighting a fire under this men's community that is watching this program, and like to see us take some action on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, this conversation can just go on and on and on and on. I mean, I can remember maybe a handful of times where I had that opportunity where someone just sat with me and just listened. And I know, in my 40s now, I can think back just only a few times where I've had that. And of course, in my shell, I didn't reach out, I didn't expand or share with them, but the opportunity was there. But it's not a dwelling point. It's just a point of reflection right now that I'm having with this conversation. So do we have any last thoughts, if we can just keep these brief?
I have just a really quick question for Shawn. Like, we kind of have heard a little bit about the impacts on kids but what are the impacts on you as a mentor? How does it affect you? What is your experience, like in as brief as you can understand?
Yeah, I mean, really for me, it just gets me out of myself. And the more I can get out of myself and giving back, especially to kids who are just like me, the more fulfilling and rewarding my life is. So as long as I can get out of myself and help those that I'm called to help, that just makes my life better all over.
Makes sense.
That service is a way to heal yourself, right? Very selfishly.
Well, you bring up a good point, Meredith, because what I find myself doing when I help that little kid, I'm answering questions, because I had these questions like, what would make my mom abandon me when I was 2 years old? And then I'm reaffirming the fact that there is nothing wrong with this child. And it wasn't about something being bad about me. It's just other things. So I am healing myself as I continue to help. You're so right.
It's that
Nothing
inner
wrong
child
with
work.
Hmm?
I said that is that inner child work that takes place on a subconscious level.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
In action. Yeah.
Our big brothers say it more than anybody else, and they always say it the same way, and it's uncanny. And I keep saying this. They say something to the effect of, I am pretty sure I'm making some sort of positive difference in the life of my little brother. But man, this experience and time with him is changing me. They don't get more specific than that. Maybe that's just a man thing, but they say it and they use those words.
Mm.
Consistent all over the place. It's just the way it is.
I'm willing to bet it's some type of subconscious thing that they're not even aware of, because everyone has a wounded child somewhere, somewhere deep buried inside. So, if you're fortunate enough to actually pin a label on it as, something cool, very good. But just the fact that even if they can't expound on it, they know it's there. They feel it, and they might not understand it. They just trust that something is stirring, and that's a good thing.
Mhm.
Very good. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, we're out of time, peeps. We're out of time. As per usual, we show up, we show out, and we do the work. And thank you. This has been most blessings for myself. And just on behalf of all of us, I just want to thank everyone out there who's listening. Find us on Facebook, and I do believe that there has been some posts in the thread about where to find you too. It's definitely Big Brother, Big Sister of the Lowcountry. It's on Facebook, and any other posts, any other questions or comments, please feel free to make them known in the comments thread. We'll be glad to get back to them as they come up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for inviting us and giving us a
Thank you.
forum and for this
Thank you.
conversation.
Appreciate
Thank you.
all of you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Good job, everyone.